Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to episode 13 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. Which on this episode, we're going to be talking about what happens if spirits come home with you. It's probably the number one question that I get at events when we go and do evidence presentations and things like that. And it's funny when you answer these questions because I used to not want to answer them because you just sound crazy talking about this stuff. But then I realized that, most people don't go out and spend full time hours in haunted locations and invite things to happen to them. And if they did, they would most definitely encounter things that they can't explain and things that you would sound crazy talking about. But the people that have to deal with this are often spouses. And I always felt bad for Laura when I was investigating because she was not an investigator, is not an investigator, has never been one, but yet she would have to deal with madness at the house, which happens to almost every real investigator that I know. So, yeah, I'm answering the question in short here, which is that yes, if you spend heavy hours being a paranormal investigator, ghost hunting all the time, working multiple cases, things absolutely happen at your home. It's kind of weird because I think the answer is part spiritual and part just literal in the sense that when you work on paranormal cases all the time, you have to basically look at what you're doing. Going into a place that's haunted, usually you're going into a place that has a negative haunting because negative hauntings have a tendency to make more noise in the community. People are freaked out by it. Those are the cases where people want help. Remember that most hauntings, 99% of them, are nonviolent. People know there's a ghost in their house. They're fine with it as long as it doesn't disrupt their life. But in the negative cases, where there is a spirit that is upset, angry, there will be activity. And if you're an investigator, a third party walking into these places, and you're saying, hey, whatever's here, not only am I opening the gate of communication, I'm begging you to not only speak to me, but to do something, throw something, move something, affect me in a literal way. When you investigate, in the dark especially, your senses are almost like heightened, it seems like. You're paying such close attention to what sounds are being made, any kind of visual color shift in the room. You're just very alert, more so than in your normal life. And whenever you pay attention to something that much, that doesn't stop when the investigation's over. You will go home and you still kind of have that mind state. And it's hard to step out of it. And the reason I bring that up is when we're talking about spirits, we're talking about energy. Human beings are energy. We have electricity coming off our body. What happens when a person is almost dead or they flatline? They hit them in the chest with paddles, with electricity. They shock their heart back to working, because we are energy. And when you're around negative energy a lot, it seems as though you have a tendency to attract it. So if I'm working on a really negative case, like the best example is on Paranormal State. I had worked on the Quincy, Illinois IM6 case. Before that, we were in Kentucky working on a demonic case. And then I was going home and working on my family's case. So I was never turning it off. I was constantly in a state of hyper alertness. I was constantly aware of my surroundings. I was very depressed because these are very negative cases. And in life, if you believe in karma, if you believe in that type of thing, if you're constantly focusing on death and despair and fear and sadness, then, you're going to carry that in your personality. You're going to carry it in the way you walk. It's going to affect everything that you do. Now, that's the literal side of it, just the physical side of it, the side of it that, I think anybody could understand. That if you're focused on negativity all the time, then you're going to start leading a somewhat negative life and bad things are going to happen to you. That's one of the downsides of working on demonic cases specifically and negative cases, or hauntings in general that are negative, which again, those are mostly the cases that you have a tendency to work on. The the spiritual side, the ghost rapping and tapping and the things that go, boom in the night. People have a tendency to think that it works one way. That when you go ghost hunting, that you can say, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, and beg this response. And then if you're lucky, you get one, right? So you're going back and forth the whole night. Well, a lot of people don't stop and consider, when you decide you're done talking, that doesn't mean whoever you were talking to was done talking. And just because you leave a bedroom or drive in a car or fly on a plane doesn't mean you left that spirit behind, because it can't get in a car or fly in a plane. In the world of energy, there are no walls. So I think the more you engage with spirits and say, talk to me, they're going to decide if they want to talk, when they want to talk, but more importantly, when they're done. So myself, Justin, Joey, Mary Beth, all of us would have things happen in our home, and more often than not, again, they would affect our spouse. And I'll tell you just a few quick stories that really brought about the end of my investigating super dark and demonic cases. It started with a phone call from Justin. And it was just a normal day, and I was just working on some film stuff. And Justin called me and said, well, it happened. And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I think there's something weird in my house. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, because for a long time, nothing was happening in his place. And he would hear stories about it, and he'd be skeptical of it. I go, really? I go, what happened to you? And he goes, well, it wasn't me. And he goes, it was Dana. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he goes, Dana came home from work and told me someone was in our hallway last night. And he said, I was like, what? And she said, basically, she woke up and there was this black figure that was standing in their hallway just past their bedroom door, and that it walked to the edge of their bed. And that she thought at first it was him, and then blinked her eyes a few times and realized that he was sleeping next to her, and it wasn't him. Blinked her eyes a few times again and realized that it was gone. And so she was freaked out, obviously. And Justin, certainly didn't feel comfortable about it. This stuff happened at my house a lot, and the area of my life that it would first affect would be my dogs. Throughout a good decade of my ghost hunting career, I had these two puppies, Hobbs and Capone. And Hobbs was a little mutt, a cute little Staffordshire that we saved. And Capone was a purebred English bulldog. And they were so incredibly reactive. They would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, and they would chase things around the house. I would wake up in bed, and they would be standing at the end of the bed on the mattresses growling in opposite directions. We always knew when something really weird was beginning to happen by their reactions. And I'm a firm believer that animals absolutely can see or sense spirit activity. But we had about a week straight where the dogs just could not sleep. They could not sleep no matter what we would do. Even during the day, it seemed like right when they would fall asleep, something would happen. They would hear something, and they were always on edge to the point that they started fighting each other. And I knew it was just stress because they hadn't been sleeping. And Laura and I started talking about the fact that we were really concerned with them for that reason. So that evening, my back is hurting. I told you guys before on the podcast I have a bad back, and we used to have this hot tub, which I could just go down and get this super hot, really, really hot tub treatment. It would make my back feel so much better. And it was probably about 200 footsteps from my front door. So I decide I'm going to go down and take care of my back, and I do. and I had just gotten comfortable. The heat was just settling in, and I looked over and I noticed my phone was moving across the ground. Well, I had accidentally shut off my ringer on my way down, so the vibration was on, and it was just, I mean, it was vibrating like someone was calling over and over and over again. Grabbed my phone right away because I know this has got to be important. Why would anybody be, texting that much? And I flip it over, and it's from Laura saying, "Chad, come now, help, help, come now." And I'm freaking out. I'm like, what? Like, what is so terrifying that she's texting like this, knowing that I'm 200 feet away? So I jump out as fast as I can. I grab my phone and I just go sprinting for my door. I get to the door, I open it. I see there's food that's cooking, but it's still on. Laura hasn't shut it off. And I look into the bedroom, which is to the left of me, and I don't see her. And I go through this hallway and look in the bathroom, and I don't see her. And I come out, and then initially in the living room, I don't see her. And I'm like, "Laura?" And then I hear her say, "Chad." And I look down, and she's like tucked down in the corner over by my computer. She's sitting with her hands around her knees, and I could tell she's been crying. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, what is up? I'm here. What is going on? She's like, "I want you to stop." I'm like, "Stop what?" She goes, "I want you to stop investigating." I'm like, "Okay, just explain to me what happened." And she's like, "No, I want you to stop, Chad." I go, "Okay, okay. I go, what's going on? Talk to me." She goes, "As I was making dinner and cutting up the lettuce, I looked through our hallway into the bedroom." I go, "Yeah?" And she goes, "And then I saw something." And I go, "Something?" And she goes, "I don't want to say it." And I go, "What?" And she goes, "I saw something walk by." I go, "Laura, come on. What'd you see?" And she goes, "I don't want to say it." I go, "Laura, what did you see?" She pauses and says, "I saw you." She goes, "You went walking by, but it wasn't you. And you looked at me in this way, and it just wasn't your look." And I go, "Wait a minute, you saw me?" And she goes, "Yes, I saw you." I go, "What did I do?" And she goes, "You just walked from the bedroom to the bathroom." I'm like, "Okay." And she goes, "Right when you got in the doorway, you just looked over at me." I go, "Did I say anything?" And she goes, "No, but it was just the way you looked at me. It wasn't you, but it was you." Well, I knew what Laura was talking about, and she didn't know what she was talking about. She was talking about doppelganger, and this has been reported throughout the world. This happens a lot on demonic cases where the entity will try to scare family members that are close to the target, and they'll do it often with things like this, impersonations. But supposedly, they can't copy you perfectly. There'll always be something that triggers the person to go, "That's not real. That's them, but that's not them." And that's what happened. And I could see that she was terrified, and that was enough for me. I mean, uh, when my work starts affecting my home to the point where there can be no peace in my own home, then it's just not worth it to me. It's not the calling that I have. Like I said, I'm not a demonologist in any fashion. So I promised Laura that day that I was going to finish the cases I was working on, and then I was done. And I have not done demonic work since. Um, but if you want to hear a very positive message to end this on, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell ever because it's just so beautiful. Um, when Laura's mother passed away for a long time, Laura was hoping that she would get some kind of message. And it was even harder living with me because I'm somebody who goes out and, does all kinds of investigating. And I have, all these EVPs and all this stuff that I'm constantly showing her. And I think she just wanted to know that her mother was still around her. In which I assured Laura, I said, she absolutely is. And I believe that. And a pretty long time period went by, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. And Laura and I had a talk one day, in which I could tell she was just very sad. And I said, "Why are you sad?" And she just said, "I haven't felt like I have a sign from my mom. I know she's with me, but I would just like some way, just something, you know?" And I said, "Well, we can't pick or choose these things. They're a mystery and a riddle. We never know, you know, when they're going to happen, when they're not going to happen. But, uh, the time will come where you get your sign. I really believe that." And probably a couple more weeks went by, and I was at the bank. I was in line at the bank, and I was going to deposit a check. And God as my witness, a girl walks up to me, and she says, "I have a message for you." And I go, "Okay." And she goes, "Here." And she hands me this note. And it's a full 8 by 11 piece of paper, just handwritten top to bottom. And she goes, "I just feel like I'm supposed to give this to you." I go, "Okay, so do you watch the show?" Because Paranormal State was on at that time. And she goes, "Huh?" I'm like, "Are you a fan of Paranormal State?" And she goes, "I don't know what that is." And I go, "You don't know me." She goes, "No." I go, "What do you do for a living?" She's like, "I'm an accountant." I go, "And you just felt like you had a message you had to give to me." And she goes, "Yeah, this is really weird." I go, "What are you, like some religious fruit or something?" And she goes, "No." She goes, "I believe in something, but no." And she goes, "I don't know what to say other than I wrote this. These words came to me, and I was told to give them to you." I'm like, "Okay." Just something popped in your brain and said, "Give it to that guy." She pauses and goes, "Yeah." And she's like, "I got to use the bank, but I'm going to go." And I go, "Okay." And she went and got in line at the other line for the teller. And I got to the car, and I open it up and I read the whole thing. And I realize it's not a message to me. It's a message to Laura. What was really cool is Laura knows my handwriting, so she knows it wasn't mine. It didn't come from me. You could clearly see that it was female handwriting. I even told her, I said, "We can go down to the bank. They have it on film. They have this whole thing on film. They have to. They have surveillance cameras. It's just the weirdest thing I've ever experienced." Um, I don't want to share the message because it's between Laura and her mother, but I will just say that it was a beautiful message in which the essence of the note was that her mother was proud of her. It was beautiful to see those tears in Laura's eyes. And the beautiful thing about Laura's letter to me is that it was the yin to the yang. Although there are cases where negative spirits go from one location to another and wreak havoc on somebody's home, we're always encumbered by energy. There's all kinds of people that come in and out of our house all the time. I really believe this. Sometimes it's because someone like me is inviting them back without even knowing it. But other times, it's somebody from your past that's beautiful. Somebody that you need. Somebody that's just there to tell you, "I love you and I'm here with you." And that's a beautiful thing. Thank you once again for listening to the In a Crowded Room podcast. I hope you're enjoying it so far. I'll be back tomorrow with more. All the best.